I would say that brand is only the domain of consumer-facing companies. It applies to every company, regardless of what your B2B, B2C, not-for-profit brand is. Brand is brand. It's an organizing, governing principle that allows decision makers to make informed decisions faster, better, cheaper. Okay, that's what brand does for anybody.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, a serial entrepreneur who's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Scott Markman. And Scott, we're going to talk a lot about branding. You know, what is branding? If you were to ask 100 people, 96 of those people would probably get it wrong. So we'll talk a little bit about that and why value talk about value and process and brand doesn't really change based on the company size, and how to create a brand from scratch, and how to be creative in the industry. And also maybe talk a little bit how branding is more than just or more than just pricing or people or stores. It's all of it combined, and how or what all goes into branding, and go down that route. So and probably a whole lot more, and it'll be a great discussion. So with that much as introduction, welcome on the podcast, Scott.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here.
So now, before we dive into the topics at hand, you know, first of all, you were a guest on the Inventive Journey, which is the sister podcast of this one. A great episode. Definitely encourage people to go check out Scott's episode there if you haven't had a listen to it. But for those that either haven't had to check out the episode or saying, hey, I'm too busy, I just want to hear the expertise and move on, why don't you give the audience kind of a 1 or 2 minute kind of overview or introduction to yourself as to why you have a bit of experience in this area, and why you know what you're talking about?
Sure. So I am a corporate graphic designer by training. I have a BFA from Washington U in St. Louis, graduated I think 42 years ago. And so spent the first chunk of my career as somebody else's designer, worked at some great places. And then in 1990, kind of hung my shingle here in Chicago as a freelance designer. I built the agency of the firm up to become a multi-person design firm. Some opportunities present themselves to kind of morph and reinvent in more of a full service ad agency, which we were for about another 10 years. Took on some partners, and they had different backgrounds than I did. And so the intersection of our experience and our skill set between a big agency creative director, myself in corporate design, and a market researcher, big corporate experience, was brand. And so about 16, 17 years ago, we even pivoted once again to really become a branding agency and a subset of brand, which is more about evolving and repositioning brands versus inventing brands. We do maybe a quarter of our clients need a brand from whole cloth, but most of the work we do are clients that are successful, but their strategic issues, their needs, their opportunities, their future path requires the counsel and kind of stepping back in what our firm does to say where should you go and why, and how to do that over, let's say, a 10-year period. And so that's the work we do. We've worked in, I don't know, I'm going to guess 50, 60 categories, a mix of B2B, B2C, not-for-profit. Again, as you had alluded to, the process and the path and the objectives don't change regardless of size of company, category, business circumstance. How to think about brand.
Yeah, and I was going to say, let's maybe with that is a great introduction, and definitely it was helpful. Let's dive into the topic at hand now. We'll definitely get into branding. One of the things I thought was interesting is we talked a bit before that you kind of mentioned is, if you were to go and ask basically 100 people on the street, or maybe even 100 business owners, what is a brand, or kind of what is marketing, but particularly with a brand, people with 96 percent or 96 out of those 100 people are going to answer that question wrong. So kind of why do you think that they'd answer it wrong, and what is the kind of the genesis for people having that confusion or not fully or grasping that?
Sure. So For a lot of people, either business owners or just, I'll just call consumers or just, individuals, a brand may be a logo because it's the symbol, it's the visualization of a brand, it's the lightning rod for what a brand is about, but it's not a brand. It's the face of a brand or the tip of the iceberg. Brands are, in our view, DNA. It's the everything. It's where does something begin and end, and how do facets correlate to each other? The answer is they all do, but you have to take your hands and think about the totality of things and how brand is agreed upon, thought through, developed, executed, shared, measured, and impactful across the entire enterprise. And again, it doesn't matter what category, doesn't matter how big the company is, the complexity. What I just described applies literally to every company in the world, and frankly, these days to individuals.
Let me ask one of those, because I certainly get and agree with you that it's a holistic approach. And yet, if I was somebody that's doing a startup or a small business, that sounds a bit overwhelming. Typically say, okay, how do I establish a brand? I'll go get a logo. I will, maybe get a catchphrase. I'll get a website, and there's my brand, right? Or something along those lines. And yet, to take that holistic approach is definitely worthwhile and makes sense. And yet, on the other hand, you're going to say, man, this is overwhelming. This is so much that I have to think about when I want to establish your brand. And so if you're putting yourself kind of in that startup small business mode where they don't either have a brand or just getting started with a brand, or they're saying, we really should have had a brand a long time ago, but we've never really gone through that exercise. How do you kind of even approach building a brand for your business if it is really more of that holistic approach as opposed to, a logo and a website type of a thing?
Sure. So let's think about the industry or category that any company plays in. The two easiest examples that I can give that I think will frame what we believe and how we approach this, there are actually two brands we all know, one of which is Starbucks, the other which is Jimmy John's Subs. So you may think of Starbucks as a brand about coffee, and that's not entirely wrong, but it's really not the origin of the company. Howard Schultz, who invented Starbucks, was a coffee machine. He was an espresso machine salesman, and his company was in Milan, Italy. And he used to go to Italy once or twice a year for business meetings, whatever. And he observed in Milan that there was something called the coffee bar, and it was the integral to the fabric of society. And so what he observed is people would leave their house, they would go to the coffee bar in the morning, they'd read the newspaper, they would finish their espresso, they'd get on the train, they'd go to work, come back and just reverse the same thing. They would stop at the coffee bar, have the evening paper, there were probably 6 espresso, and then they would finish the newspaper, they'd go home. And so he gave a name to it. The name was the third place. So actually the idea, what I described as the DNA, the everything of Starbucks is the third place. It's not coffee. In a weird way, coffee is the enabler. It's the means by which he delivers the idea of a third place, which is after work and after home and after work, a place that is central to one's life, to the fabric of how you lead your life. And that's how and why he built Starbucks when he had 5 stores or 3 stores or 2 stores. That was the vision that he was trying to bring to life. And he used extreme premium coffee as the means to that end, because that's what he knew, because who he worked for. But every decision that has ever been made around building the Starbucks brand and the enterprise and those stores and their products and their pricing and all that stuff is enabling the idea of the third place. So today, across the world, for a lot of us, Starbucks does fit that role in our lives. It's where you hang out. It's that morning routine. It's where you read a book or where you do work. It's just, it fits a central role in your life.
Jimmy John's. Oh, go ahead. No, yeah, finish your example. Go ahead.
Along the same lines, Jimmy John's in a highly competitive category, Subway and Quiznos and Potbelly. Jimmy John's is about one thing. It's not about food. It's about speed. Everything that they say is get in, get out, consistency. They never, ever, ever in the marketing talk about food. They don't talk about the pricing. They don't talk about the freshness of their ingredients. They don't talk about how healthy it is for you. It's one thing, get in, get out. You know what you're getting from us. and we'll have fun with it. End of conversation. That is the brand. I've been buying from Jimmy John's for, I don't know, 10 years, and I get one thing. It has literally never changed. But I know when I walk in, I'm getting in, getting out in 90 seconds.
Oh, and so let me ask something, because both of those, maybe Jimmy John's not quite so much, but I, little bit more familiar with the Starbucks example and, kind of what they've done. And, that was a long journey in the sense that now, they offer a lot of times, and at least they did, scholarships, and they help with schooling. They do a lot of community outreach. They're making it that third place. One point they had a different CEO took over and tried to introduce a lot of breakfast foods. It backfired. They had to remove that. And so it seems like, the brand has evolved over a period of time, and maybe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't necessarily all thought out or perfectly set in stone. And so, is a brand something that's evolving or changing, or should you figure that all out at the beginning, or kind of how do you even go about figuring all that out? Because what you described, as Starbucks example, there's a lot in there to unpack as far as how they've developed that brand and made it that third place. And so kind of if you're to put yourself into somebody that's starting to establish a brand, how do you even go about figuring that all out?
Okay, so easy example. Every company, again, whether they have one store or one location or this big or that big, you only have the assets of time and people and product and service and whatever to kind of work with. And Schultz made a huge decision early on when he just was really getting Starbucks off the ground. Instead of advertising, he put his money into people. And what he did was he gave them health insurance for part-time workers, and he invested in training. So he got a better cut of person. They were better trained to deliver upon the experience and therefore the idea of the brand, the third place, through the baristas. The baristas were the linchpin to that, along with the design, and I'll call it the finish of the stores, and the visual experience, the lighting experience, the ambient experience of those stores, along with those baristas who delivered upon the promise of, you walk up to the front of that line, you get 10,000 choices, and at the end of that line, you get your choice in, let's say, a minute or a minute and a half, and 99% of the time it's flawless. That is the idea of the third place, the expectation. So he invested in people. Now, that has really not changed. He gets a better cut of person than McDonald's does, or Jimmy John's, and they're better trained. They're just a different cut of human being to deliver what is a fast food service experience. Now, in addition, I do want to say, because you bring up an excellent point, brands are organic. They're not static. They're not stiff. They're not set in stone. They're not set in concrete. They evolve over time. But the true north of the brand, what that company is about, the third place, has not changed. Now, all the details and the componentry have changed because they need to, because this company has existed for 35 years. When they were started, it didn't exist. The internet, email didn't exist when they started the company. Think about the role of the app today and ordering ahead, and you get your drink and you leave. Terrific. That was a massive investment in technology to deliver upon the third place idea, but responding to the opportunities and the competitive environment and what customers wanted. This all has to map to who's buying, what do they want, and what are the other guys doing. Still staying true to your brand, but you have to take all this into account. Brands evolve and they're organic without denying kind of their path.
No, and I think that's definitely insightful. Now I'm going to ask kind of a follow-up question to that, which is, so now let's say you said, okay, let's say today you were starting your business, you had the best idea, and you were going to choose whatever idea you were going to do, and you had the new idea, innovative, breakthrough, different startup, but you're going to start today. You said, okay, today's the day I'm quitting my full-time job. I'm going to start today and I'm going to make something of this. If you're one of the first steps would be is to establish or get a plan for that brand identity. What would be the steps, or kind of how would you go about tackling that? Because I think that sometimes is difficult to grasp, especially if you haven't been through it, as to how you even go about tackling that. So what would be kind of those steps that you would start to walk through?
Sure. So we're big sort of fans of the author and lecturer Simon Sinek, who made his career around a simple thought: people buy why you do something, not what you do and how you do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that as a 32 plus year entrepreneur, I would say to anybody who's looking to establish a business in any category, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing this? What do you think is the market opportunity, the gap that needs to be filled, that any buyer or consumer can't get right now, that you have something unique to bring to market? In addition, you have to understand, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? Because if you hated where you last worked and your boss was a jerk and blah, 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 maybe that's a part of it. But if you don't understand the life of the entrepreneur and it being kind of mission driven, I don't mean altruistic, I don't mean not-for-profit orientation, but mission driven, that why are you doing this? Or you and your colleagues doing this? Because you believe in what you can create and sell and its value to those that are buying it or are the channel to deliver it. If you don't believe in that, you are dead on arrival. If there isn't a reason, a cause-based reason around these decisions, I would say to any entrepreneur, don't bother. Suppose that you do, then that's the starting point.
So if I were to maybe summarize that just as an understandable for me, one is, figure out what your own motivation is, why you're doing it, and why you're leaving your job to go do the startup. But then two is identify for your great idea, your new invention, your new product, your new business, what it is, what need it serves, or what gap it fills in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Again, let's go back to Jimmy John's model. When Jimmy John, the guy, started the company, there were a lot of, Subway existed. There were lots of, lunchtime places. He had an idea. If I could build a process to build a sandwich and get people in, get people out faster, would that be a differentiator to the point that they would start to come to my store? He's from Champaign, Illinois. And the answer was yes. And he reverse engineered an entire process to deliver upon the promise, and then value, and the food is good enough and the process is consistent enough to deliver upon that now times thousands of stores. So it started with a simple idea. Sometimes it doesn't have to be complicated. You just have to identify a gap, and that there's value that the purchaser cannot get right now. And I think, or we think, we can build and deliver upon that. It's not more complicated than that.
So let's say I identify a gap. So I'll give Miller IP Law just as an example, because it's an easy one that I'm familiar with. So Miller IP Law, one, I left big law firms because I didn't want to be told what to do. I wanted to be able to do things the way that I thought made sense. And I think the law or the legal industry doesn't always do the things that make sense. I also wanted to focus on startups and small businesses, which are dramatically underserved within the intellectual property. So that was my motivation for leaving. And then my gap was, okay, very few firms focus on helping startups and small businesses. They don't set their pricing right. They don't make it transparent. They don't have enough material. They don't help them to answer questions, and on and on. So there's my gap. So let's say I identify those two things to start out with. What's my next step?
Well, you need to kind of build the machine. If you have a service and or a product, you need to build the machine, the process, the componentry, the people, the raw material, the delivery mechanism. How are you going to build and deliver, in effect, what you're going to be selling? Regardless of, again, whether it's product, service, all of those things. You still have to have a means to deliver the end on some level. And then there's the, how do you take it to market? Who are the people? What are the channels? What's the storefront? Again, I'm saying metaphorically, through which you will offer up your services, and then how will you let prospective buyers know about it, both through an outbound marketing effort and an inbound marketing effort, search. These are the kind of ways that, how are you going to go to market and attract prospects? And then once you start to get a flow of revenue and contracts and delivery, and orders, how can you make sure that you're delivering upon the basic promise and you're not sort of lowering your standards or straying off the reservation and ruthlessly executing as best you can? Because the best way to kill any brand is to sell or market X and not be able to deliver upon it. It's the fastest way to kill a brand. Whatever you claim, like, have your ambitions be more modest, but crush it, as opposed to have broad ambitions but have uneven delivery. It's the kiss of death.
Oh, no, so, and I think that that definitely makes sense. And so you're saying, okay, so let's say I figure out, I said, okay, way I'm going to approach, going to market, right or wrong. And I think it's always sometimes you learn and you figure out this is how I think I'm going to approach or hit or find my customers or clients. And now I've established who they are. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to find them. So let's say LinkedIn, great place for startups and small businesses. Maybe I will do some SEO. I'll build a website that will be targeted to these type of clients. I will do maybe a little bit of Facebook, either organic, or do maybe some advertising on Facebook or Google AdWords. In other words, I almost go through the same thing that a lot of companies do, because they all tend to say, well, where do I go? I could do or paid advertising. Maybe I'll do a website. Maybe I'll do online, and maybe I'll do some webinars or presentations or go to trade shows. But so it seems like while in theory people always find out how to do that, it becomes a lot more difficult. So any tips or kind of, as you're defining your go-to market, and that how you can not just fall into that trap of doing the exact same thing that, yes, I have my customers, but at the end of the day, it seems like it's the exact same approach that everybody's taken.
Sure, there's two facets I would comment and expand upon. The first of which is that every brand has multiple audiences, both internal and external and intermediary. And you need to be thinking about multiple audiences and their self-interest. What is the brand going to do for me? Why should I care? How is it different and better? Take those questions and multiply it across multiple audiences, and all of a sudden there's a level of complexity that every brand has to accommodate and to manage through. Employees have a different value proposition they're looking for from customers. Within customers, different sets of, kinds of clusters of customers, your suppliers, your channel partners, if you have a distribution network, let's say, they all have a self-interest in doing business with a brand that is personally based, even if it's a business buyer, which can be much more considered purchase, longer lead times, more intellectual, fact-based buying versus an individual. When you're buying, I make this up, a Subway sandwich or a cup of coffee, it's much more of an impulse purchase or a quick purchase. And it's all, the individual cares about what they care about, not what their colleagues care about. Well, when someone goes to Starbucks, what is the emotional need that they are filling by choosing Starbucks over Dunkin' or over the indie coffee shop down the street? They all sell coffee, but the experience and the rationale as to why you go A, B, or C is wildly different, even though they're on the surface selling the same product. You go into Starbucks, it's about, this is a statement of self. I'm a Starbucks consumer and I'm smart and I'm kind of hip and I'm kind of urbane and blah, blah, blah. And, I can get 10,000 drinks and I can cherry pick all the ingredients I want to arrive at the exact product that I dream of. And I'll pay through the nose for it. It could be $5. I don't care. You can't buy coffee at Dunkin' for $5. And they have about 4 choices. But they're about something else. They're a little bit more blue collar-y. They're get out. They're a little bit about the basics. And there's an appeal to that. There's no right or wrong to this. It's just different. The indie coffee shop. I know Harry and Sally who own the shop. They're my neighbors. They know what I want. And I'm happy to support the local entrepreneur. And I feel good about that. And so I choose to spend $3 with them versus going to Starbucks down the street. All of these are about emotional drivers. What is the end purchaser looking to fulfill in their heart? These are heart decisions. Buying is heart-based, not head-based. You justify up here, you buy down here. And that is for every brand on the planet.
Now, let me kind of follow up with one of the kind of a question on that. So you say, okay, figured all that out, maybe I am the, take the Starbucks model and I have great employees. I focus on, making a good customer experience. It's the third place, the place where I stop, and I put all of my time and effort on the brand or, the branding of really just building that full culture, making it something, that it stands out, that has all of those features or those aspects or that we just talked about. Now, the question is how do you actually get the word out to that? In other words, if I had let's say I replicated the Starbucks model and I did it in the legal industry, just again to follow an example, and I made it a great experience. We had really good customer service. We were very responsive. We made it so you could understand the pricing, on, and I really fixed all those problems. It only seems like I'm halfway there. In other words, if I have all of that, I have all of those in place, and yet nobody knows about it, it doesn't really help me that I have all that in place. And so how do you message that or actually get the word out so that if you are Starbucks or you are, whoever, that now people know about it, as opposed to, hey, we've got all the internals and the structure built, but nobody knows about us, so we're still failing.
Look, on some level, it comes down to resources, right? Time, money, and people. And every company, when they are at the starting gate, has from very little time, money, people to maybe a lot if they're venture backed or something. I'm just saying that no two are the same way. If you're the indie coffee shop, you may be standing on the street giving away samples of your coffee and your pastries to start a flow of the neighbors understanding, hey, I'm Sally and Harry, and I just opened an indie coffee shop, down the street, and let's just try our stuff. And if you like it, stop in. We'll give you a discount. Tell your neighbors. There's promotional ways to start to fan the flames of word of mouth and a little bit of impulse buying, neighborhood stop by kind of stuff. That's one example where it's just a husband and wife, and they have a storefront, and their means of time, money, and people are limited, right? Maybe making sure the simple stuff, the easy stuff, you register with Google Maps and Google Neighborhood kind of stuff, so that if somebody's like, coffee near me, bam, you show up on the map. That's low hanging fruit. That's really a technological, free thing to do. But look, if you have a budget to put some spend against Facebook ads or other, digital channels, or you can run, a billboard here and there, then you have to think about the delivery mechanisms that are appropriate for the market position I want to claim. Are you going to try and be the premium player? Are you going to try and be the dash in, dash out, low cost provider, whatever you're doing? You have to think about, where can and should I show up to match to the image I'm trying to create? Because there's lots of choices that are related to budget, but not exclusively about budget. So how you go to market is as important as what you market to understand about you.
I think that definitely makes perfect sense. And this is an area where I could go on forever. I think it's a fun point of discussion, at least for those that are kind of business nerds, and so to speak. And so we could certainly have a much longer discussion, yet unfortunately we're reaching towards the end of the episode, and then we'll definitely have to have you on again sometime and have a follow-up discussion and learn even more about your business and you guys' approach. And that would be another fun conversation for another day. But as we start to wrap towards the end of the episode, I always have one question I'd like to ask at the end of each episode, which is, if you're, every industry has different myths. In the legal industry, there are plenty of myths out there. In the patent industry, there are plenty of myths out there. And every industry kind of has a myth. So things that have been perpetuated on the internet or word of mouth, or just somehow came to being, and it's not correct, and it's a myth, and it's wrong, and yet people continue to persist to believe in it. So within your industry, within branding and marketing and doing those things, what is one of the biggest myths, and why is it wrong?
I would say that brand is only the domain of consumer-facing companies. It applies to every company, regardless of what your B2B, B2C, not-for-profit brand is. Brand. It's an organizing, governing principle that allows decision makers to make informed decisions faster, better, cheaper. Okay, that's what brand does for anybody. The second thing is, what is the value of a brand? I would say, unlike how a lot of people would answer that question, it would be two things. Number one, raise your prices and don't lose business. And number two, answering the question, what else can I sell you? Because if you have Starbucks established a brand in coffee, and today they sell you pastries and sandwiches and yogurt and nuts and and coffee mugs and all this other stuff that is related to their brand, but is not coffee, as you may think it is. So again, every brand has a strong brand, those are opportunities. If I can take the same product to sell to you, Devin, for $1.50 and I start selling it for $2 and I don't lose business, it means my profit margin goes through the roof, number one. And then number two, if what I sell for you $1.50, I have 5 more things I can sell you for another $1.50. All of a sudden the ticket goes from $1.50 to $7 with one transaction. I'm just growing my sales and making a ton more money under one brand.
No, I think that that's definitely some great dispelling of some myths that are out there and what brand really is. And so with that, as we now wrap towards the end of the podcast, if people are interested that say, hey, I love your philosophy and brand, I think it's spot on and we'd love to hire you. So they want to be a customer or client, they want to be an employee, say, hey, I'd love to work for you. They want to be an investor in your business if you take on investors, and or they want to be your next best friend. What's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, or find out more?
Sure. Our agency website is Monogram Group, MONOGRAM, GRUP.com. Anything you would want to know about our agency, case studies, the people, the service lines, all of it is all there. My contact information these days, the agency line is my cell number. We got rid of a landline a couple years ago, but my, get a hold of me or ask Mark by monogramgroup.com. My email is right there. So right at the bottom of the homepage, or there's a form to fill out that I get those as well.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to check that out. I definitely visit and make connections, and then you leverage a great ability or a great resource to build your brand. And so thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you can make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, because we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these great expertise to make sure that, or to help people to build and establish their startups and small businesses. And with that, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a fun and a pleasure, Scott, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you, Devin. Really appreciate it.